Good evening, Brian. It's Thursday, and that means it's time for a Thursday Top 5. So, Brian, if I had to ask you, what was one of the most recurring themes of our vlog experience so far, what would you say? Of course, Brian, I'm talking about podcasts. So, for today's Thursday Top 5, I'm going to talk about my top 5 favorite podcasts that are new. And so the parameters for this, Brian, is I'm only counting podcasts where they started in the year of 2017. So it is currently May 18th, 2017, so they've had about 4.5 months so far. But that's it. Nothing that started in 2016, only things that have started this year so far. And because I listen to lots and lots of podcasts, even in that little bit of constraint of 4.5 months, there's still like 7 or 8 or 9 podcasts that I have started subscribing to that have started this year. So I did actually have to narrow it down a little bit. So without further ado, I'm going to get into it. These are in no particular order, but here they are. The first one I want to talk about is called Download. It's a new podcast on the Relay FM network, and I'm sure you probably know about it because it is Jason Snell's new show, which is a weekly show that sort of rounds up all of the tech news from the week. One of the other cool things about it is he is the host of it, but he really focuses on trying to bring on a diverse set of guests every week. So it's going to be a bunch of people we haven't heard on Relay FM before, and it's less of him talking, more of him being a facilitator for the other people to talk, and Steven's there as well. But so far, I really like it. I definitely recommend you check it out. It only has a couple of episodes out so far. Sorry, my battery died, so I had to do the thing. Or my battery was about to die, so I had to do the thing. But it's only got a few episodes so far. I'll put links for all of these down in the description below, but I really think you should check it out because it's awesome. The next one I'll talk about is one that you probably can't access, so it's kind of cheating, but it's called Fusion. It is a members-only podcast for those who are members of Relay FM that have sort of signed up, sort of like Patreon, to help support the network, and therefore you get access to a monthly show called Fusion where Steven interviews 2 different hosts from Relay shows who don't host shows with each other about a topic. But it's really interesting so far, plus you get neat mashups of shows where it might be like, I've heard person A on this show and person B on this show, but I haven't heard them together, so that's really cool. So if you ever think about supporting Relay FM and becoming a member, I would recommend it, if only for Fusion. The third one I want to talk about is another new Relay FM show. There's a trend here called Originality. This one just launched in the last couple weeks, I think. It's Aline Sims, who used to host a different show on Relay FM called Less Than or Equal, and then Kay Tempest Bradford, who is another person who I don't think has hosted a podcast on Relay FM before, but it's them talking about originality and creativity and the work that people do in that regard. And it's really interesting because, as we talked about before, I would like to get more into creative things, but I haven't really done it too much so far. But I like both of them so far, and it's cool topics, and so it's definitely been fun so far. The next one I'll talk about is Roboism, which is another new one on Relay FM that started at the same time as Originality did just in the last few weeks. And this one, it's hard to pin down so far, but the 2 hosts are really knowledgeable about tech and robots, and they talk about nerdy things like artificial intelligence and gadgets and robots. So that's fun. You should check that out too. The last one we'll talk about is a little bit different. It's not Relay FM, and it's called Up First. This is a show by NPR, and it's a 10-minute every weekday morning news show, which is great because, as I'm sure you can commiserate with, trying to keep up with the news of the day is really draining, but I feel like it's still important to be aware of the big things that are happening, and so this is perfect. It's a little bite-sized thing. Since I listen on sped up speed on my podcast player, it is like 5 minutes long, but it sort of is a quick rundown of all of the news items that are, the biggest things that are happening that day. And since it comes out every weekday, it's a little bit at a time, but I'm always a little bit more knowledgeable about the world, which I think is very important. So I think you should definitely check out all of these shows of Brian, and I look forward to seeing your video tomorrow. Have a good night.